Deep beneath the Mojave Desert, far from the lights of New Vegas and the endless wind that moves across cracked highways, Vault 11 sits in silence. Its corridors are still, its terminals still glow faintly. And inside its final chamber, a recording plays a message that changes everything. The experiment is over. The test has been passed. The survivors are free to leave. But the mystery does not end there. Because 5 people walked into that chamber, and the game never tells us what happened after they stepped outside. We know the broad story of Vault 11. Each year, one resident was to be sacrificed. The people believed that if they refused, the vault would execute everyone. For years, elections were held, campaigns were fought, lies were told, people were chosen, people died. Eventually, the remaining residents discovered the truth: the threat was never real. The punishment was a lie. When they refused to sacrifice another person, the system congratulated them. 5 people survived long enough to hear that message. But the Mojave outside was not kind. The first question is simple: did they actually leave together? When we find Vault 11 during the events of New Vegas, centuries have passed. The vault is empty. Powder gangers have occupied parts of it at one point, but there is no sign of the original 5 survivors' remains in the immediate area. No skeletons just outside the entrance. No journals. No holotapes describing their journey into the desert. If they died quickly, it was not within sight of the vault door. This suggests they walked, and walking in the Mojave means choosing a direction. Vault 11 is located near the Mojave Outpost and Nipton. At the time, the survivors would have emerged likely shortly after the Great War's aftermath. The NCR did not yet control the region. The Legion had not yet marched west. The Strip had not yet risen under Mr. House's Securitrons. The desert would have been harsher, more chaotic, less organized. So, what would 5 psychologically scarred individuals do? It is easy to imagine them staying together at first. They had just endured years of fear and forced sacrifice. They had watched neighbors die. Some may have voted for friends. Some may have campaigned for survival. The trauma alone would have bound them together temporarily. The outside world, no matter how dangerous, would have felt almost peaceful compared to what they had done underground. But the Mojave is not forgiving. Radiation pockets still lingered in the early post-war years. Water sources were unreliable. Raiders were likely more desperate and less organized. 5 people, even armed, would have been vulnerable. There is also the matter of psychological damage. These were not ordinary vault dwellers. They were the last ones left after civil collapse. By the time they refused to sacrifice anyone else, the vault had already descended into violence and factional conflict. Many had died in riots. The final chamber was not reached peacefully. That means the 5 who survived likely had blood on their hands, directly or indirectly. Would they have trusted each other outside? The reward message in the chamber congratulates them for refusing to continue the sacrifices, but it does not heal what happened before. Imagine stepping into the sunlight, knowing you had participated in years of ritualized killing, even if under false pretenses. That burden would not disappear simply because a speaker told you that you passed. It is possible they did not remain 5 for long. Perhaps they split up within days. Perhaps arguments broke out over what direction to take. Perhaps someone blamed someone else for a previous vote. Perhaps one of them could not cope with freedom after so much structured fear. Vault life, even horrific vault life, provided routine. The desert provided none. There is another possibility, one that is quieter and harder to disprove. What if they reached a settlement? Small post-war communities did exist in the Mojave long before the events of New Vegas. Primitive trading hubs, scavenger camps, isolated farms. If 5 relatively educated vault dwellers approached such a settlement, they would have brought knowledge, technical knowledge, political knowledge, organizational experience. Would anyone have believed their story? Imagine telling a wasteland farmer that your vault forced you to sacrifice one person per year, that you voted, that you obeyed, that you stopped only at the end. In a world already filled with horror, would that story have sounded shocking or normal? It is possible that one or more of them chose never to speak of Vault 11 again. This leads to a more subtle theory. What if one of the unnamed NPCs in the Mojave is descended from them? We never see a confirmed lineage, but Vault 11's population would have included families before the collapse. The 5 survivors may have been young adults. They may have had children later. They may have integrated quietly into Mojave society. There is something almost haunting about this idea, that somewhere in Novak, or Freeside, or the NCR, there might be bloodlines that trace back to Vault 11, and no one knows it. Another possibility is darker. The Mojave outpost lies not far from Vault 11. If the survivors traveled that direction, they would have encountered Legion territory eventually. If this occurred before NCR expansion, they might have faced slavers. 5 vault dwellers emerging with limited supplies could easily have been overpowered. We know the Legion enslaves those it captures. It is not impossible that the final survivors of Vault 11 died in chains, their experiment replaced by another form of control. But there is no direct evidence for this. What we do know is that Vault 11 itself contains no indication that the survivors returned. No bodies in the entrance hall, no signs of attempted re-entry. That suggests they committed to leaving. There is also a thematic element to consider. Vault 11's experiment tested obedience. It asked whether people would commit cruelty under the belief that it was necessary. The survivors passed only when they refused. If the vault rewarded them with freedom, perhaps the narrative implication is that they earned a chance at a different life. In this interpretation, the lack of evidence is intentional. Their fate is unwritten because it is meant to be hopeful. They stepped into the Mojave, and their story became their own. But New Vegas is rarely so simple. The final chamber contains holotapes left by those who realized the truth too late. The air in the vault feels heavy even centuries later. The silence is not peaceful. It is reflective. The walls hold memory. If the 5 survivors carried that weight into the desert, it would not have faded easily. One can imagine them camping under the stars for the first time. No artificial lighting, no election speeches, no annual fear, just wind moving across sand. That first night must have felt unreal. Freedom can be frightening when you have lived under rigid rules for so long. And then there is the final, unsettling detail. The vault congratulates them. The system tells them they are worthy. Worthy of what? The message frames freedom as a reward. But freedom should not be a reward. It should have been the default. Vault-Tec designed the experiment so that refusing to kill was treated as exceptional. If the survivors internalized that logic, they may have struggled with guilt in a different way. They were not innocent people escaping injustice. They were participants who eventually stopped participating. That nuance makes their potential survival more complex. Perhaps they never found peace. Perhaps they told no one their origin. Perhaps they wandered separately, each trying to outrun memory. Or perhaps one of them became a quiet leader somewhere in the Mojave, determined never again to allow fear to dictate morality. The mystery remains. because New Vegas never resolves it. The vault door stands open when we find it. The final chamber still echoes with that congratulatory message. The desert outside gives no answers. And maybe that is the point. Vault 11 was about choice. In the end, 5 people made one final choice: to walk away. What happened after that belongs not to Vault-Tec, not to the Mojave, not even to history. It belongs to them, and somewhere beneath the desert wind, long after the experiment ended, the silence outside Vault 11 remains, holding the memory of 5 figures stepping into the light, their fate unknown, their past heavy, and the vast Mojave stretching endlessly before them. Far to the west of the Mojave, beyond the familiar roads and faction borders, there stands a city that was never meant to be found. The Sierra Madre rises out of a red, poisoned fog, its grand casino lights still glowing faintly after 2 centuries. It was built as a monument to love, to obsession, to preservation, and to control. It was designed to outlast the Great War. In many ways, it succeeded, but the real mystery of the Sierra Madre is not the gold locked inside its vault. It is whether Father Elijah was right about what the place truly represents. When the courier first arrives at the Sierra Madre during the events of Dead Money, they do not come by choice. They are dragged there by circumstance, fitted with an explosive collar, and forced to participate in a carefully orchestrated heist. The casino feels less like a location and more like a trap that has been waiting patiently for centuries. The red cloud rolls endlessly through the streets, corroding metal and flesh alike. The ghost people patrol silently, their hazmat suits fused to their bodies. The environment itself seems designed to punish greed and impatience. Father Elijah sees something different. To him, the Sierra Madre is not a graveyard. It is a promise, a fortress untouched by the chaos of the Mojave, a technological marvel capable of reshaping the wasteland. While others see a cursed city defined by obsession and tragedy, Elijah sees potential. He believes that the Sierra Madre's systems, its holograms, and its self-sustaining architecture represent the future of control. The vault beneath the casino contains hundreds of gold bars, each impossibly heavy. Together, they represent unimaginable wealth, yet the design ensures that carrying them all is nearly impossible. The weight is not arbitrary, it is deliberate. The vault tempts the player with abundance, then restricts their ability to claim it. The Sierra Madre offers everything, but demands sacrifice in return. This is where the central mystery begins to take shape. Was the Sierra Madre always meant to trap those who sought its riches? Before the bombs fell, Frederick Sinclair built the casino as a monument to his love for Vera Keys. He spared no expense. The architecture is lavish. The technology is cutting edge, even by pre-war standards. The security systems are advanced beyond anything seen in most of the Mojave. The hologram guards are nearly indestructible, functioning long after civilization collapsed. Yet beneath this romantic origin lies a darker layer. Sinclair was aware of the cloud. The toxic substance that blankets the city was not an accident of war. It was part of a broader experiment tied to Big MT, a research facility known for its morally questionable projects. The cloud's properties suggest intentional development. It corrodes, mutates, and preserves in equal measure. It turns the Sierra Madre into an isolated ecosystem. Was the casino designed as a sanctuary or as a containment facility? Father Elijah believes that the Sierra Madre's systems can be repurposed. He sees the holograms as perfect soldiers, immune to fatigue and fear. He sees the cloud as a weapon capable of wiping out enemies silently, He sees the vending machines, powered by the casino's chips, as a method of resource control that could replace traditional supply chains. In his mind, the Sierra Madre is not a prison, it is a blueprint for domination. But every character drawn to the Sierra Madre is defined by obsession. Dean Domino cannot let go of his resentment towards Sinclair. Christine pursues Elijah relentlessly, even when it costs her voice. Dog and God struggle with their fractured identity, unable to reconcile hunger and reason. The courier is tempted by gold that can barely be carried, and Elijah himself becomes consumed by the idea of controlling something that has already consumed so many others. The vault is the final test. When the courier reaches it, the gold bars sit in neat stacks, gleaming beneath cold lights. The wealth is tangible, real, and within reach. Yet escape becomes exponentially more difficult the more one tries to carry. The design forces a choice between greed and survival. It is not enough to reach the treasure. One must decide how much is worth taking. Was this intentional? The Sierra Madre constantly repeats a message through its speakers. Begin again. The phrase echoes through hallways and across rooftops. It suggests renewal, but also repetition. It implies that those who arrive are not the first to attempt this heist, nor will they be the last. The city resets in cycles, drawing in the desperate and the ambitious, offering them wealth while trapping them in its mechanisms. In this sense, the Sierra Madre is less about gold and more about human behavior. Father Elijah argues that the wasteland needs order imposed upon it. He believes that control, even harsh control, is preferable to chaos. The Sierra Madre, in his view, provides the tools to enforce that control. The holograms obey without question. The cloud spreads without discrimination. The vending machines provide resources without reliance on unstable trade networks. Yet every system in the Sierra Madre operates within a closed loop. The holograms defend empty hallways. The cloud poisons the very city it protects. The vending machines require chips that must be scavenged from the ruins. The city sustains itself, but it does not grow. It does not expand. It does not adapt. Father Elijah sees strength in permanence, but permanence can also be stagnation. The ghost people offer another piece of the mystery. They are former workers and residents trapped within hazmat suits, preserved and twisted by prolonged exposure to the cloud. They do not speak. They patrol endlessly. They rise again unless dismembered. Their existence blurs the line between life and death. They are what happens when preservation goes too far. If Elijah had succeeded in mastering the Sierra Madre, would the Mojave have become another version of it? A land protected by invincible holograms and blanketed by toxic fog. A region where resources are distributed through machines rather than communities. A society defined not by cooperation, but by enforced containment. The gold bars themselves are symbolic. Each one is incredibly heavy. Carrying even a handful slows movement to a crawl. Attempting to take them all makes escape nearly impossible without exploiting unintended mechanics. The game design mirrors the narrative theme. Greed is punished not through moral lecture, but through physical limitation. Elijah cannot let go of the gold, even when trapped in the vault. Even when the system turns against him, he clings to the belief that control and wealth justify any cost. He sees the Sierra Madre not as a warning, but as validation of his worldview. He interprets its survival as proof that harsh measures are necessary to endure. But the Sierra Madre has not thrived. It has endured in isolation. It has preserved itself by consuming those who enter. Its lights still glow, but its streets are empty. Perhaps That is the real answer to whether Elijah was right. He was correct that the Sierra Madre represents power. Its technology is formidable. Its defenses are unmatched in many ways. Its systems have survived 2 centuries. But survival alone does not equal success. The casino exists as a self-contained monument to obsession, not as a functioning society. The Mojave, by contrast, is chaotic and flawed. Factions argue and compete. Settlements struggle and rebuild. People make mistakes and adapt. The desert changes, even slowly. The Sierra Madre does not change, it repeats. The phrase begin again takes on a different meaning in this context. It is not an invitation to rebuild the world through control. It is a reminder that letting go may be the only way forward. The courier can choose to leave the gold behind. They can trap Elijah in the vault. They can escape with little or nothing. The city remains, unchanged, waiting for the next arrival. Father Elijah believed that the wasteland needed a place like the Sierra Madre to reshape it. But perhaps the Sierra Madre exists as a warning instead, a demonstration of what happens when love turns into fixation, when security becomes isolation, and when wealth becomes more important than life. The gold bars are real. The cloud is real. The holograms are real. Yet none of them create a living community. The Sierra Madre endures because it does not trust. It does not open its gates. It does not invite growth. In the quiet halls of the casino, beneath chandeliers that still flicker faintly, the question lingers. Was Elijah right that control is the only path to stability? Or was he simply another man seduced by the illusion of permanence? The Mojave continues to shift and argue long after the events of Dead Money conclude. Hoover Dam will change hands. Factions will rise or fall. The courier's choices ripple outward. The Sierra Madre, however, remains where it always was, wrapped in red fog, repeating its message to anyone who listens. Begin again. Perhaps the real treasure of the Sierra Madre is not the gold locked inside its vault, but the lesson embedded in its design, that holding on too tightly can trap you, that wealth without freedom is hollow, that control without growth leads only to isolation. Father Elijah saw the Sierra Madre as salvation, but salvation that requires collars, fog, and endless patrols may not be salvation at all. And somewhere beneath the red haze, the casino lights continue to glow, patient and unchanged, waiting for the next wanderer who believes they can take everything and walk away untouched. There are many dangers scattered across the Mojave wasteland, but most of them make sense within the world's harsh logic. Raiders gather in ruined buildings because survival demands it. The Legion marches west because conquest defines its purpose. The NCR expands because bureaucracy and ambition rarely rest. Even creatures like Deathclaws and Cazadors exist as products of pre-war experimentation or natural mutation. The mysterious stranger, however, does not fit comfortably into any of these explanations. He does not claim territory. He does not leave bodies behind for scavengers to find later. He does not speak of ideology or survival. He appears without warning, helps without explanation, and disappears without a trace. In gameplay terms, the mysterious stranger is tied to a perk that grants a chance for him to appear during VATS combat. When he arrives, he fires several precise shots from a revolver, often eliminating one or more enemies instantly. A brief musical sting accompanies his presence, almost like a cue from an old Western film, and then he vanishes as quickly as he came. The encounter lasts only seconds, and yet it leaves behind a lingering question that New Vegas never answers. Who is this man, and how does he move through the Mojave in ways that seem to defy normal rules. Unlike companions, the mysterious stranger does not walk toward you from a visible position on the map. He does not run in from the horizon or descend from nearby rooftops. He materializes within arm's reach, sometimes even inside enclosed vault corridors or tight interior rooms. There is no door opening behind him, no audible footstep announcing his arrival. When Vats slows the world down to a suspended moment of heightened awareness, he is suddenly there, standing slightly to the side, raising his revolver with calm efficiency. Then, once the shots are fired, he steps back into nothingness. The environment returns to normal speed, and he is gone. In Fallout 3, a character known as the Lonesome Drifter claims that his father was the mysterious stranger. He describes a distant, silent man who would appear occasionally during his childhood before vanishing again without explanation. If this account is accurate, then the stranger is at least human, capable of fatherhood, aging, and moving across different regions of the wasteland. New Vegas, however, complicates this interpretation by offering no further confirmation. The Drifter does not appear in the Mojave, and no one in New Vegas references the stranger directly. The connection remains suggestive but unresolved. If the mysterious stranger is a single individual aging normally, then his continued presence across multiple regions raises logistical questions. How does he know where to be? How does he consistently arrive at the exact moment when VATS activates? Does he follow the courier specifically, observing from a distance and stepping in only when the odds tilt too heavily against them? The Mojave is vast, filled with miles of desert, mountains, and ruined cities. For one man to track a single wanderer with such precision would require resources, knowledge, and patience that exceed what we typically associate with lone gunslingers. Another possibility is that the mysterious stranger is not one person, but a role adopted by multiple individuals. The clothing is simple enough to replicate: a trench coat, a fedora, and a revolver. The Mojave contains no shortage of capable gunfighters who might adopt a mythic persona to instill fear or curiosity. In this theory, the stranger is less an individual and more an identity passed quietly from one person to another, perhaps even within a family. The Lonesome Drifter's claim about his father would then represent only one branch of a larger tradition. Yet this interpretation struggles to explain the seamless way in which the stranger appears in enclosed spaces, or how he times his arrival to the precise rhythm of VATS. The musical cue that accompanies his appearance adds another layer of strangeness. In a world where most ambient sounds are grounded in wind, gunfire, or radio static, the brief, dramatic sting feels almost metatextual. It signals that something unusual has occurred, not just within the narrative, but within the mechanics of the game itself. The Mojave rarely acknowledges its own artifice, yet the mysterious stranger's theme suggests awareness beyond the diegetic world. It is as if the wasteland briefly steps aside to allow this figure to pass through. Some players have speculated that the stranger could be tied to pre-war intelligence operations, perhaps a surviving covert operative trained to intervene in conflicts with surgical precision. However, there is no in-game documentation supporting this theory. No terminal entries mention a roaming vigilante program, no holotapes reference a fedora-wearing agent dispatched to preserve balance. The Mojave is rich with pre-war secrets, from Big MT's experiments to House's long-term calculations, yet none point toward the stranger. His absence from written history makes him more mysterious, not less. The fact that he does not consistently appear is equally telling. His intervention is governed by probability rather than necessity. He might emerge during a minor skirmish with a handful of fiends and remain absent during a desperate confrontation with multiple deathclaws. There is no moral judgment in his timing, no narrative logic that ensures he arrives only when truly needed. This randomness gives him an almost mythological quality, like a desert spirit whose presence cannot be summoned or predicted. The Mojave is filled with stories that blur the line between legend and reality. The Sierra Madre promises treasure while trapping the greedy. Camp Searchlight glows with unnatural light, its residents transformed by radiation. The divide whispers with the consequences of past choices. In such a landscape, a silent gunslinger who appears only in moments of slowed time feels less like an anomaly and more like an extension of the world's quiet strangeness. Yet even within this context, he stands apart because he does not leave evidence. There are no campsites attributed to him, no spent cartridges that can be traced back to a unique revolver model. No NPC ever remarks on having seen a trench-coated figure assisting the courier in battle. Companions do not comment on his sudden presence. It is as though only the player perceives him fully, while the rest of the Mojave continues unaware. This leads to another interpretation, one that is less grounded but more unsettling. Perhaps the mysterious stranger exists partly within the courier's heightened perception. VATS represents a moment of tactical clarity, where time slows and the player chooses targets deliberately. The stranger's appearance within that system suggests he may be linked not to the physical world, but to the courier's state of mind. He could be a manifestation of instinct, a personification of split-second decision-making given form within the slowed frame of combat. This explanation edges toward metaphor, but New Vegas never closes the door on it. Still, the lonesome drifter complicates purely psychological readings. If the stranger fathered a child, then he must exist physically in the world at least some of the time. That physical existence implies travel, aging, and survival. The Mojave is not an easy place to wander alone, yet the stranger seems untouched by hardship. His coat is intact, his movement steady, his aim flawless. He does not display the wear of a scavenger or the arrogance of a faction soldier. He exists outside the political tensions that define New Vegas. He does not align with the NCR's bureaucracy, the Legion's brutality, Mr. House's calculated order, or Yes Man's open-ended chaos. He appears equally during all endings, indifferent to which banner ultimately flies over Hoover Dam. This neutrality suggests that whatever drives him operates independently of the Mojave's power struggles. He is not interested in shaping nations or claiming territory. His interventions are personal and immediate, confined to the space of a single firefight. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of the mysterious stranger is his silence. He never speaks, never gestures beyond what is necessary to fire his weapon. Speech would anchor him to humanity, providing tone and personality. Silence allows him to remain undefined. Without dialogue, he cannot contradict himself or reveal motive. He remains an outline filled only by speculation. In a wasteland filled with loud voices and clashing ideologies, his quiet presence feels almost calming. He demands nothing from the courier. He offers no quest, no reward beyond the momentary advantage in combat. He arrives, acts, and leaves. The Mojave resumes its harsh rhythm as if nothing extraordinary occurred. The desert is vast enough to conceal countless travelers. It is possible, even likely, that many stories go untold between settlements. A man could wander for years without leaving a mark strong enough to survive centuries. The mysterious stranger might simply be one such wanderer, his legend amplified by those brief, dramatic encounters in combat. He might sleep in abandoned shacks, cross highways under starlight, and observe conflicts from a distance before choosing when to intervene. Yet, the precision of his timing resists full rationalization. His appearance during VATS, a mechanic that slows time itself, ties him to something beyond ordinary movement. He operates within that suspended moment as though it were his natural habitat. When time stretches thin and every bullet path becomes visible, he steps into view as if he has always been waiting just outside perception. New Vegas never resolves this mystery, and perhaps it never intended to. The Mojave thrives on unanswered questions. Not every ruin contains a holotape explaining its fall. Not every ghostly rumor has a terminal entry confirming its origin. The mysterious stranger fits comfortably into this tradition of ambiguity. He is not meant to be solved. He is meant to be noticed, briefly, and then wondered about later. As you walk the highways of the Mojave at night, the wind moving gently through broken signs and abandoned cars, it is easy to imagine that he is still out there somewhere beyond the next ridge. Perhaps he watches from a rooftop in Freeside, or from the shadows of a ruined overpass. Perhaps he listens to distant gunfire and decides whether it is worth intervening. Perhaps he passes by unnoticed, just another silhouette in a world of silhouettes. Who he is may never be fully known, whether he is one man aging quietly, a legacy passed between strangers, or something tied to the fabric of perception itself. He remains what his name suggests. He is a presence defined by absence, a helper who never stays, a figure who exists between explanation and myth. In the stillness of the Mojave night, with only the sound of wind and distant radio static, it is not difficult to imagine that he continues to walk unseen, waiting for the next moment when time slows and a single shot can alter the course of a fight before vanishing once more into the desert. South of Novak and not far from the Colorado River lies Camp Searchlight, a town that glows faintly even in daylight. It was once an NCR outpost, a modest settlement reinforced with sandbags and optimism. Soldiers were stationed there to secure trade routes and establish a foothold in Legion territory. The plan was simple and familiar to the Republic: claim, fortify, and expand. For a brief time, Camp Searchlight functioned as intended. Then the Legion changed the rules. According to scattered NCR reports and survivor accounts, the Legion infiltrated the town and detonated radioactive materials, deliberately irradiating the entire area. It was not a conventional assault. There were no prolonged firefights, no dramatic last stands broadcast across the Mojave. Instead, the Legion weaponized radiation itself. The result was not immediate destruction, but transformation. When the courier arrives, the town is bathed in lingering radiation. Buildings stand intact, but the air itself hums with danger. The NCR flag still hangs from certain structures, faded but present. It feels less like a battlefield and more like a place abandoned mid-breath. Most of the NCR soldiers stationed there became feral ghouls. They wander the streets in tattered uniforms, glowing faintly, driven by instinct rather than duty. Yet not all of them lost their minds immediately. Private Edwards, one of the few who retained clarity long enough to speak, describes the event with quiet horror. He remembers the bomb. He remembers the burning sensation. He remembers watching fellow soldiers change. This is where the mystery begins. Why did some soldiers turn feral almost immediately, while others retained their personalities for a time? Ghoulification in Fallout has always carried inconsistencies. Some individuals exposed to massive radiation remain lucid for decades. Others lose themselves within days. Camp Searchlight presents a concentrated case study of this unpredictability. The Legion's attack was not random, it was tactical. By irradiating the town rather than storming it, they ensured that NCR reinforcements would hesitate to reclaim it. Radiation becomes both weapon and deterrent. Yet the Legion itself avoids lingering in the area. They achieved their goal and moved on, leaving the Republic to confront the aftermath. The buildings remain largely intact, which makes the emptiness more unsettling. Chairs are overturned, but not shattered. Terminals still flicker. The church stands quiet, its basement hiding something even stranger. Inside, glowing ghouls gather in what appears almost like ritualistic congregation. They are not speaking, not organizing, but their proximity to a place of worship gives the scene an eerie undertone. Was this intentional? Did the soldiers seek shelter in the church when the bomb detonated, or did the symbolism emerge afterward, a tragic coincidence in a world where meaning often overlays chaos? The game does not clarify. It simply presents the image and allows the player to interpret. Private Edwards eventually chooses exile. Rather than remain in the irradiated town or return to NCR command, he isolates himself in a nearby fire station. He understands that ghoulification may progress unpredictably. He fears becoming feral. His decision reflects a quiet awareness of the fragility of identity in the face of radiation. The NCR officially marks Camp Searchlight as lost. They do not attempt to reclaim it immediately. They establish boundaries and redirect supply lines. Strategically, this makes sense. Emotionally, it feels like abandonment. The town stands as a scar in Republic territory, a reminder that the Legion does not always fight by conventional means. There is also the question of timing. The radiation level remains high when the courier visits, suggesting that the attack was not ancient history. It was recent enough that the transformation of the soldiers still feels fresh. The Mojave moves on quickly, but Camp Searchlight remains frozen in that moment of impact. Radiation and fallout functions both as hazard and narrative device. It changes people physically, but it also distorts the idea of permanence. A town can stand structurally intact, yet be rendered uninhabitable. A soldier can survive exposure, yet lose the very personality that defined them. Camp Searchlight embodies this paradox. It is neither fully destroyed nor fully alive. Some players have speculated whether the Legion's bomb contained experimental materials beyond standard radioactive waste. The degree of transformation seems intense even by wasteland standards. However, there is no explicit evidence of exotic compounds. It may simply be that concentrated exposure, delivered suddenly and without warning, overwhelms the body's capacity to adapt gradually. The feral ghouls that roam the streets still wear NCR armor. Their rifles lie scattered nearby, sometimes still loaded. It is possible that in the first moments after the blast, confusion reigned. Soldiers may have attempted to maintain order, unaware that their own bodies were changing. The transformation into ferality could have occurred while they were still trying to organize defense. That thought adds a layer of tragedy to the town's silence. Camp Searchlight is not dramatic in the way that Hoover Dam is dramatic. It does not feature climactic speeches or large-scale battles when the courier arrives. Instead, it offers quiet exploration. Geiger counters click steadily. Wind moves through empty streets. The glowing figures shuffle without purpose. In some ways, the town feels like a warning about escalation. The NCR seeks expansion. The Legion seeks domination. Both claim moral superiority. Camp Searchlight demonstrates what happens when strategy becomes cruelty. The Legion did not simply defeat an NCR garrison, they turned it into a long-lasting hazard, a psychological blow that lingers. Yet even within this bleak scenario, the mystery remains incomplete. Ghoulification is unpredictable, and the long-term fate of Camp Searchlight is never fully resolved. Could the radiation eventually subside enough for reclamation? Could some ghouls regain lucidity? Fallout lore suggests that virality is usually irreversible, but the boundaries are never absolute. There is also the unsettling possibility that the town's story will fade from memory. The Mojave is full of ruins, older and stranger than Camp Searchlight. As new conflicts emerge, older tragedies are absorbed into background noise. A settlement glowing faintly in the distance becomes just another landmark rather than a recent wound. The church basement lingers in memory. The NCR uniforms, still visible on twisted bodies, make it difficult to detach the event from faction politics. These were not nameless wastelanders. They were Republic soldiers with assignments and ambitions. Their transformation undercuts the image of NCR order. The Legion's choice of weapon reflects their broader philosophy. They prefer fear as a tool. They prefer spectacle that sends a message. Camp Searchlight sends a message that lingers long after gunfire fades. Radiation cannot be negotiated with. It cannot be reasoned into retreat. It simply persists. The courier can clear the town of feral ghouls, completing quests and earning favor. Yet clearing does not restore what was lost. The radiation remains. The atmosphere does not shift into normalcy. The flag still hangs, but the community it once represented is gone. Camp Searchlight stands as one of New Vegas's quieter mysteries because it resists a tidy explanation. The Legion's attack is known, but the deeper implications are not. Why did some retain consciousness, briefly? Could better medical response have altered outcomes? Did NCR Command underestimate the Legion's willingness to weaponize the environment itself? The answers are not recorded in terminals or holotapes. Instead, the town exists as a living question mark. It invites exploration, but not resolution. It offers tragedy, but not closure. In the broader narrative of New Vegas, it occupies a side road, a detour from the main conflict at Hoover Dam. Yet its silence speaks loudly about the cost of territorial ambition. As the sun sets over Camp Searchlight, the radiation glow becomes more pronounced. Shadows stretch across cracked pavement. The feral ghouls wander without memory of who they were. The Mojave wind carries dust through streets that once held organized patrols. The town does not explain itself. It does not justify the Legion's strategy or redeem the NCR's expansionism. It simply remains. A reminder that in the wasteland, destruction does not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it comes quietly, invisibly, transforming a place from within until only a faint glow remains as evidence that something irreversible occurred there. The first time you see one of them, it is rarely dramatic. There is no cinematic reveal, no sudden roar that announces their presence. Instead, a shape moves slowly through the red fog. It walks with a stiff, uneven rhythm, as though its joints do not fully cooperate. The suit it wears looks industrial, heavy, sealed against contamination. The mask is featureless, opaque, giving nothing back when you stare at it. Then it turns toward you, and without a word, it advances. The ghost people of the Sierra Madre are not introduced with explanation. They simply exist. They patrol streets and rooftops as if following instructions that no longer need to be spoken. They carry makeshift weapons, fashioned from pipes and sharpened metal. They absorb bullets without reacting the way ordinary enemies do. Even after you knock them down, they sometimes rise again, unless you sever limbs to ensure they remain still. The question that lingers beneath every encounter is simple and unsettling. What are they? The most common theory presented within Dead Money is that they were once human workers and residents of the Sierra Madre who were exposed to the cloud. The cloud, a corrosive red mist developed in pre-war experiments connected to Big MT, blankets the city. It seeps into buildings, fills hallways, and burns the lungs of anyone who lingers too long without protection. Over time, prolonged exposure appears to have altered those trapped within it. Their hazmat suits are not ordinary clothing. They are industrial-grade suits, designed to protect workers from hazardous materials. Yet after centuries, the suits have fused to the bodies inside. Cutting one open does not reveal a clean separation between fabric and flesh. The implication is that the people within have been preserved and distorted by the very gear meant to protect them. Preservation is an important word here. The ghost people do not rot in the way typical corpses do. They do not appear skeletal beneath torn fabric. Their movements are slow but deliberate. They react to threats with coordination that suggests some retained instinct. They are not mindless in the same way that feral ghouls are often portrayed. They patrol routes. They respond to noise. They guard the casino as if it still matters. Why do they only die permanently when dismembered? This mechanical detail carries narrative weight. Shooting them repeatedly will drop them temporarily, but unless limbs are severed, they may rise again. It suggests that whatever animates them is not easily disrupted by conventional injury. Perhaps the cloud has altered their physiology, thickening tissue, or changing pain response. Perhaps the suits themselves provide structural integrity, holding damaged bodies upright. There is also the possibility that the ghost people are not entirely biological anymore. Big MT experiments involved extreme technological integration. The Sierra Madre's systems blur the line between human and machine. It is not impossible that some augmentation or chemical process occurred that transformed workers into something sustained by more than normal metabolism. Yet the game never provides a terminal entry explaining their transformation in clinical terms. Instead, it leaves fragments, environmental storytelling, hints about construction crews trapped during the war, clues that the cloud leaked unexpectedly. The absence of a definitive explanation makes them more unsettling. Their silence is perhaps their most haunting feature. They do not speak, even in broken fragments. They do not cry out. Their movements are accompanied only by the faint rasp of suit fabric and the muffled echo of boots on pavement. It is as if whatever humanity remains inside is locked away, unable or unwilling to surface. The Sierra Madre itself reinforces their purpose. The casino stands as a monument to obsession, and the ghost people act like its eternal sentinels. They guard entrances, patrol rooftops, and react aggressively to intruders. They do not wander into the Mojave. They do not expand territory. They remain bound to the city, as if tied to its survival. Are they conscious? This question lingers without resolution. Some of their behavior suggests instinct rather than thought, yet their coordination implies memory. They use weapons. They attempt flanking movements. They retreat briefly before re-engaging. These are not random shambles. They are patterns. If there is consciousness within them, it may be fragmented. Perhaps the cloud did not erase identity completely, but buried it beneath layers of chemical alteration and isolation. The suits may function like prisons, preserving bodies while distorting minds. It is worth noting that the Sierra Madre has existed for over 2 centuries. If the ghost people were transformed shortly after the bombs fell, then they have endured in this state for generations. That endurance alone suggests that whatever sustains them is stable. They do not age visibly. They do not seem to weaken. The cloud may act as both poison and preservative, maintaining their altered forms indefinitely. Father Elijah views the Sierra Madre as a tool for domination. He rarely comments on the ghost people with compassion. To him, they are obstacles or potential assets. This perspective reflects his broader worldview. He sees systems, not individuals. If the ghost people were once human, their loss of self does not trouble him. What matters is that they can be controlled or bypassed. Yet for the player, encountering them feels different. The industrial suits, the muffled movements, the sense that something human is trapped within creates unease. They are not grotesque in the exaggerated way of some Fallout creatures. They are restrained, almost mundane in design. That restraint makes them more believable. The requirement to dismember them adds another layer of discomfort. It forces a more deliberate act of violence. Shooting until they fall is not enough. You must ensure they do not rise. The mechanic transforms combat into something closer to containment than conquest. There is also the environmental implication that the ghost people were workers, building or maintaining the Sierra Madre before the war. They may have been ordinary laborers caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. The bombs fell, the cloud spread, escape routes closed. The suits that were meant to protect them became permanent shells. If this is true, then the Sierra Madre is not just a trap for greedy outsiders. It is a tomb for those who never intended to be part of its story. Their connection to the casino suggests loyalty without choice. They defend it endlessly, even though the society that created it no longer exists. The hologram guards enforce security protocols with mechanical precision, while the ghost people provide a more organic layer of defense. Together, they create a city that cannot easily be reclaimed. The mystery deepens when considering why the ghost people never fully invade the casino interior once the player activates certain systems. Their behavior seems governed by invisible boundaries. They patrol designated areas. They do not appear to strategize long-term. This reinforces the idea that they are bound by programming or chemical instinct rather than free will. The Sierra Madre is obsessed with preservation. It preserved Sinclair's love. It preserved wealth. It preserved security systems. It preserved, in a distorted way, the people trapped within it. The ghost people embody that obsession. They are preservation taken too far. In the wider context of Fallout, many creatures are the result of pre-war hubris, super mutants from forced evolution experiments, Night Stalkers from genetic manipulation. The ghost people fit this pattern, but with a subtler origin. They are not monstrous by design. They are monstrous by circumstance. When you move through the red fog and see their silhouettes in the distance, there is a quiet tragedy to it. They do not chase dreams of conquest. They do not seek revenge. They simply persist. They exist because the Sierra Madre continues to exist. The question of whether they are still human cannot be answered definitively. There are no dialogue options to reach them, no cure to reverse the transformation. They are a closed chapter, preserved like everything else in the city. In that way, they reflect the broader theme of dead money. Letting go is the lesson repeated throughout the DLC. The ghost people cannot let go of the casino. The city cannot let go of its past. Elijah cannot let go of control, the player is tempted not to let go of gold. The ghost people remain, patrolling beneath chandeliers and along rooftops, silent reminders of what happens when preservation overrides growth. They are neither fully alive nor fully dead. They are sustained by a system that refuses to decay completely. And in the quiet red haze of the Sierra Madre, their footsteps continue, echoing softly through empty streets, guarding a treasure that may never truly belong to anyone at all. Beneath the cracked streets of West Side, hidden below the noise of Freeside and the distant glow of the Strip, there is an arena known as the Thorn. It is not advertised openly on grand billboards. It does not carry the polished glamour of the ultra-luxe or the tops. Instead, it exists in shadow, a subterranean coliseum where blood sport continues long after civilization has fractured. Spectators gather not for politics or caps, but for spectacle. At the center of it all stands Red Lucy. She is composed, confident, and entirely aware of what she has built. The Thorn is not chaos, it is organized violence. Creatures from across the Mojave are brought into the arena and pitted against challengers who believe they can survive. It is brutal, yes, but it is structured. Rules exist. Wagers are placed. The audience watches with anticipation. The mystery is not that the Thorn exists. The Mojave is no stranger to arenas and cruelty. The mystery is how it sustains itself. The creatures within the Thorn are not limited to common wasteland fauna. There are rad scorpions and giant mantises, which are dangerous but manageable to capture. There are night stalkers, hybrid creatures with origins tied to Big MT. There are even death claws, apex predators of the wasteland, creatures capable of tearing through armored soldiers with ease. How are these creatures transported underground? Death claws are not passive animals that wander willingly into cages. They are territorial, aggressive, and extraordinarily strong. Capturing even one would require coordination, equipment, and risk tolerance far beyond what most scavengers possess. Moving one through the Mojave without drawing attention would be a logistical challenge in itself. Moving one into a concealed underground arena beneath Westside seems nearly impossible without significant resources. Red Lucy does not openly explain her supply lines. She speaks of hunts and rewards. She offers caps for eggs and trophies. The player can participate in acquiring creatures indirectly by collecting Deathclaw eggs or Night Stalker components. Yet the larger infrastructure remains obscured. Someone must track these beasts. Someone must coordinate their capture. Someone must ensure they survive transport. This suggests organization beyond what is visible. West Side itself is not the wealthiest region in the Mojave. It struggles with water supply and faction tension. Yet beneath it lies an arena capable of housing some of the most dangerous creatures in the wasteland. The Thorn requires food for these creatures, containment structures strong enough to withstand their strength, and handlers capable of navigating proximity without being killed. Are there unseen workers behind the scenes? The arena floor gives the illusion that Red Lucy stands at the center of operations, but any facility housing Deathclaws must involve multiple hands. Reinforced cages do not maintain themselves. Injured creatures require some form of containment management. The Thorn may appear intimate in scale, but its continued operation implies careful maintenance. The presence of Night Stalkers raises additional questions. These creatures originated in Big MT experiments, blending canine and rattlesnake DNA. They are not native to the Mojave's natural ecosystem in the same way that rad scorpions are. Their migration into the wasteland suggests prior transport or escape. For the Thorn to house them regularly, There must be a steady source. Is there a smuggling network operating quietly between Big MT's periphery and West Side? The Mojave is threaded with traders and scavengers who operate outside NCR oversight. It is possible that specialized hunters have carved out a niche capturing rare beasts for high-paying clients. The Thorn could be one endpoint in a larger black market of exotic wasteland creatures. If so, Red Lucy may not be as isolated as she appears. There is also the matter of NCR tolerance. The Republic is aware of Westside. They monitor Freeside and keep watch over the Strip. An underground arena housing Deathclaws would not be invisible to NCR intelligence indefinitely, yet there is no formal crackdown. No NCR quest to dismantle the Thorn. No public condemnation. Why? Perhaps the answer lies in scale. The Thorn is brutal, but it is contained. It does not challenge NCR authority. It does not expand territory. It provides entertainment and perhaps a pressure valve for violence. In a wasteland where order is fragile, small controlled arenas may be seen as lesser threats compared to raider gangs or Legion incursions. There is also the possibility of quiet bribery. Caps change hands easily in the Mojave. If Red Lucy ensures that her operations do not spill beyond the underground chamber, NCR may see little benefit in intervening. The Mojave is full of compromises, and not all of them are written in official records. The creatures themselves add another layer to the mystery. Deathclaws, in particular, are not easily contained long-term. They require space and likely large quantities of food. The Thorn's enclosures are reinforced, but even reinforced steel can weaken over time. That no catastrophic breach has occurred suggests either exceptional craftsmanship or consistent vigilance. Red Lucy presents herself as passionate about the arena rather than reckless. She admires strength and respects the danger involved. This attitude may contribute to the Thorn's survival. The creatures are not abused randomly. They are preserved for combat, valued for their ferocity, yet preservation and exploitation exist side by side. The arena transforms apex predators into spectacle. It transforms the Mojave's dangers into scheduled events. Spectators cheer, while challengers risk their lives for caps and reputation. The Thorn reflects a human desire to control chaos by placing it within boundaries. The underground setting intensifies the symbolism. Beneath a struggling settlement lies a carefully managed ecosystem of violence. Above ground, Westside contends with water disputes and political tension. Below ground, primal combat unfolds under artificial light. The Mojave often blurs the line between civilization and savagery. The Thorn embodies that blur. The logistics of creature transport remain perhaps the most grounded mystery. Night Stalkers and Deathclaws do not simply walk into cages voluntarily. They must be tracked, cornered, tranquilized, or restrained and moved. This implies specialized equipment, heavy-duty carts, or reinforced wagons, skilled hunters capable of surviving encounters long enough to capture rather than kill. If such hunters exist, they operate quietly. They do not advertise their trade openly. The Mojave would likely view them with a mixture of admiration and suspicion. Capturing a Deathclaw alive would require more than courage. It would require planning. There is also the unsettling question of failure. How many hunters have died attempting to supply the Thorn? How many caravans have vanished in pursuit of exotic creatures? The Mojave is littered with skeletons that tell incomplete stories. It is possible that some of those lost were tied indirectly to the arena's demands. Red Lucy does not dwell on such costs. Her focus remains forward. She offers challenges and rewards. She frames the arena as opportunity. In doing so, she creates a narrative that overshadows the infrastructure beneath it. The Thorn's existence suggests that even in a fractured wasteland, there are systems operating in shadow. Trade routes not marked on maps, agreements not written in NCR ledgers, networks of hunters and handlers who move through desert canyons with cages and chains. The Mojave is vast enough to conceal these operations. Between Legion territory, NCR patrols, and independent settlements, gaps exist where unofficial industries thrive. The Thorn may be one visible endpoint of a much larger unseen web, and yet, the arena feels strangely stable. It does not expand aggressively. It does not attempt to rival the Strip. It remains underground, almost humble in scale. This restraint may be its greatest protection. By staying small, it avoids provoking larger powers. In the end, the mystery of the Thorn is not about a single unanswered question. It is about implication. It hints at networks beyond the player's direct involvement. It suggests that the Mojave's economy includes trades that operate outside official channels. The creatures in the arena roar and strike. Spectators lean forward. Caps exchange hands. Above ground, the sun sets over Westside as if nothing unusual lies beneath. But underground, reinforced cages hold apex predators. Hunters return from distant canyons. Red Lucy watches with steady eyes as challengers enter the sand. The Mojave may appear chaotic on the surface, yet beneath it, carefully managed violence continues on schedule. And the Thorn remains, sustained by systems that prefer to remain unseen. From almost anywhere in the Mojave, you can see it, rising above the Strip like a preserved monument to a world that refused to die. The Lucky 38 dominates the skyline of New Vegas. Its lights remain functional, its walls remain intact, its doors remain sealed to all but a chosen few. While other casinos bustle with gamblers and factions maneuver for influence, the Lucky 38 stands apart, quiet and controlled. Inside, Mr. House governs through screens and securitrons. The player gains access to the casino floor, the penthouse suite, and eventually the chamber where House's preserved body rests. Yet even after these revelations, large portions of the Lucky 38 remain inaccessible. Elevators do not list every floor. Doors remain permanently sealed. Hallways end before they truly begin. What lies beyond them? The Lucky 38 was not just a casino. It was House's fortress, his laboratory, and his contingency plan. Before the bombs fell, he predicted the Great War with astonishing accuracy. He fortified his tower with advanced security systems and sealed himself inside a life support chamber designed to preserve him for centuries. If he planned so thoroughly for survival, it is difficult to believe that the accessible floors represent the entirety of his preparations. The visible portions of the Lucky 38 are immaculate compared to the rest of the Mojave. Furniture remains polished, carpets are intact, dust is minimal. The building functions as a self-contained ecosystem. Power flows uninterrupted. Securitrons patrol silently, awaiting instructions. If the accessible areas are this pristine, what might exist in the sealed sections? One possibility is redundancy. House is not a man who relies on a single system. It would be consistent with his personality to construct backup servers, auxiliary control rooms, and secondary life support chambers. If one system failed, another would activate. If one floor were breached, another could be sealed. The Lucky 38's internal architecture suggests more depth than is revealed. The elevator interface does not display every level that would logically exist in a building of that size. Skyscrapers are complex structures. They require maintenance floors, storage spaces, structural reinforcement zones, and utility corridors. Even without hidden secrets, the tower should contain more than what is accessible. Another possibility is archival storage. House was a visionary entrepreneur, deeply invested in robotics and predictive modeling. He may have preserved vast data archives within the tower. Corporate records, scientific research, artificial intelligence prototypes. If House believed civilization would fall, he might have ensured that knowledge survived alongside him. The Mojave's other factions rely on scavenged information. The Brotherhood of Steel hoards technology. The NCR attempts to rebuild bureaucracy from fragments. House, however, had foresight and resources before the bombs. It is plausible that the Lucky 38 houses repositories of intact pre-war data far beyond what the player ever sees. There is also the question of AI redundancy. Yes, man operates as an independent Securitron AI, capable of adapting loyalties. His existence suggests that House experimented with artificial intelligence at significant depth. Could there be other AI constructs within sealed floors, dormant and waiting, programs designed to assist, replace, or monitor House if needed? The tower's isolation reinforces these possibilities. Unlike other strip casinos, the Lucky 38 does not allow public traffic. It remains exclusive, accessible only by invitation. This exclusivity is not merely aesthetic. It ensures control. House dictates who enters and what they see. Control defines House's worldview. He believes the wasteland requires strong guidance, centralized authority, and technological superiority. The Lucky 38 embodies that philosophy. It is not just a building, it is a symbol of preserved order amid chaos. The unopened floors may therefore represent contingency layers, emergency bunkers within the tower, secured vaults for prototypes, perhaps even cryogenic chambers for individuals House deemed valuable enough to preserve. The technology for long-term stasis exists elsewhere in the Fallout universe. It would not be beyond House's reach to experiment with similar preservation methods. There is also the matter of cut content. Developers originally planned more accessible areas within the Lucky 38. Evidence within game files suggests unused spaces and design plans that never reached final implementation. While this meta-context exists outside the narrative, it adds a strange echo to the mystery. The floors feel sealed, not only in fiction, but in development history. However, even without cut content, the narrative itself leaves deliberate gaps. House never volunteers a full tour of his domain. He shares only what he deems necessary. His conversations focus on strategy and the future of New Vegas, not on architectural transparency. If House trusted no one completely, it stands to reason that he would hide certain systems from even his closest allies. The Securitrons are visible and active, but what if deeper layers of automation remain hidden? Manufacturing floors capable of producing additional robots, laboratories refining upgrades, surveillance systems mapping every inch of the strip in real time. The Lucky 38 survived the Great War because House calculated precisely where to intercept incoming warheads. His missile defense system neutralized most threats before they reached the tower. That system itself required infrastructure, launch systems, tracking arrays, maintenance shafts. Some of these may exist beyond the visible floors. There is also a psychological dimension to the unopened areas. The Lucky 38 is House's domain in a way that the rest of the Mojave is not. He cannot walk the streets physically, but within the tower, he maintains absolute authority. The inaccessible floors reinforce that sense of distance. Even the courier, who gains unprecedented access, never sees everything. This limitation mirrors the broader theme of New Vegas. No faction reveals its full hand. The NCR conceals political fractures. The Legion hides internal dissent. House withholds information strategically. The sealed floors become an architectural metaphor for withheld knowledge. After House's death, if the player chooses that path, the Lucky 38 remains standing. Yes, man may assume control, but he does not suddenly open every door. The building's mysteries persist. Even in endings where the courier takes control, the tower does not transform into a fully explorable space. It remains partially unknown. Perhaps the unopened floors are simply storage, maintenance, unremarkable infrastructure. But in a game so attentive to symbolism, that explanation feels incomplete. The Lucky 38 represents preserved ambition. It is the last intact monument of a pre-war magnate who refused to surrender to entropy. The Mojave is full of ruins that expose everything. Broken walls reveal bedrooms. Collapsed roofs expose offices. The Lucky 38 resists that exposure. Its sealed floors remain intact, unseen, unlooted. In a wasteland defined by scavenging, secrecy becomes power. The tower's height also contributes to its mystique. Looking up from the strip, the building feels distant, almost untouchable. The higher floors disappear into perspective, suggesting spaces far removed from the player's reach. Even when standing inside, there is a sense that the visible sections are only fragments of a much larger structure. If House had survived indefinitely, perhaps he would have eventually expanded access, or perhaps he would have kept those floors sealed forever, trusting no one fully with his complete vision. His life support chamber alone demonstrates his willingness to sacrifice conventional humanity for control. The unopened floors may contain nothing more dramatic than archived furniture and maintenance drones, or they may hold dormant technologies capable of reshaping the Mojave's future. The ambiguity allows imagination to fill the void. In a world where so much is broken and exposed, the idea of something preserved and hidden carries weight. The Lucky 38 stands not only as a strategic stronghold, but as a reminder that some knowledge remains inaccessible. The Mojave changes depending on the courier's choices. Hoover Dam may fly different banners. The Strip may shift allegiances. Yet the tower remains, rising above it all, holding secrets and floors that elevators will never reach. And perhaps that is the final layer of the mystery. No matter how much control House claimed, no matter how far his predictions extended, the Lucky 38 still contains spaces that even the player cannot fully claim. The doors remain sealed, the lights remain on, and somewhere above the floors you can walk. Unseen corridors stretch into quiet darkness, holding whatever Mr. House decided the wasteland was not ready to see. Not every mystery in New Vegas is tied to a single character or sealed vault. Some are quieter, some are scattered across the desert in the form of places that once mattered and now barely exist at all. The Mojave is filled with towns that feel unfinished, abandoned mid-story, or reduced to fragments without explanation. These places raise a simple but unsettling question: what happened here? Take Nipton as an example. When the courier first arrives, the town is already lost. Smoke rises into the sky. Bodies hang from crosses. Lottery tickets are clutched in trembling hands. The Legion has already made its statement. The massacre is not a mystery in terms of who committed it, but it is mysterious in its aftermath. Nipton was not a powerful settlement. It was not strategically vital in the way Hoover Dam is, yet it was chosen as a spectacle. Why Nipton? The Legion claims it was punishment for corruption and moral decay. They frame it as justice, but the scale of the destruction suggests something more deliberate. Nipton becomes a warning, a theater of fear. After the event, the town does not rebuild. It remains frozen in that moment of violence. No new settlers move in. No NCR attempt is made to reclaim it. It becomes a landmark of absence. Further north lies Searchlight Airport, distinct from Camp Searchlight yet similarly hollow. The airport appears intact in structure but empty in purpose. There are no ongoing flights, no attempt to restore aviation. The Mojave has roads and caravans, but no one invests in reclaiming the skies. The airport stands as a monument to infrastructure that no longer fits the wasteland's priorities. Then there is the town of Bonnie Springs. Once a small settlement, it now houses raiders and geckos. Its original residents are gone. There is no detailed terminal explaining their departure. No holotape confession. The buildings suggest domestic life once existed there. Beds remain. Kitchens stand abandoned. The story ended without documentation. The Mojave is dotted with such places. El Dorado substation hums with power, yet hosts little life. Wolfhorn Ranch appears recently occupied, but empty when found. Crescent Canyon hides traces of habitation that never developed into full settlements. Each location feels like a chapter that was interrupted. Part of this effect is design economy. Not every town can be fully populated, but within the world of New Vegas, these half-stories contribute to a broader mystery. Civilization attempts to rebuild, but it does not always succeed. Some settlements fail quietly, others are erased violently. The desert absorbs them either way. There is also the case of the Divide, though it lies beyond the base game's main path. Before it became a shattered landscape of storms and collapsed highways, it was a growing community. Trade routes passed through, buildings were restored, people saw potential. Then something triggered its destruction. Unlike Nipton, the cause was not a Legion raid. It was a catastrophic detonation tied indirectly to the courier's past. The Divide demonstrates how fragile reconstruction can be. A town can rise slowly, brick by brick, only to vanish in moments. The Mojave contains other smaller echoes of this pattern, places that seem poised for growth but stall before reaching permanence. Good Springs and Novak stand as exceptions rather than norms. They survive through careful positioning and modest ambition. They do not attempt rapid expansion. They do not provoke powerful enemies unnecessarily. Their endurance feels cautious. In contrast, settlements that expand too quickly or align too aggressively often vanish. The Mojave appears to punish overreach. Nipton aligned loosely with NCR interests while tolerating corruption. The Divide expanded its trade network without fully understanding the risks. Smaller ranches near Legion territory disappeared without record. The mystery deepens when considering pre-war towns. Some ruins are skeletal, stripped bare by 2 centuries of scavenging. Others remain surprisingly intact, yet no one claims them. Why has no faction restored certain areas? Why does the NCR not fortify more abandoned towns along key roads? Why does the Legion not occupy more visible ruins west of the Colorado? Part of the answer may lie in resources. The Mojave is harsh. Water is limited. Power requires maintenance. Even if buildings remain standing, infrastructure may not. It is easier to construct new outposts near reliable water than to revive distant ruins. But there is also fear. The Mojave is haunted by memory. Nipton stands as proof that visible settlements can become targets. A rebuilt town is an invitation for attention. Some communities may choose invisibility over prominence. In this sense, the vanishing towns are not mysteries of destruction, but of avoidance. Then there are locations like Vault 34's surroundings. The vault itself became a radioactive hazard after internal conflict and reactor failure. Nearby areas remain unstable. Attempts to resettle near such hazards would require significant technological intervention. The NCR has the manpower, but not infinite focus. The Legion has the aggression, but not the engineering priority. The Mojave's geography also shapes settlement survival. Narrow canyons create choke points that are easy to defend but hard to supply. Open plains allow trade but expose towns to raids. The vanishing settlements may simply reflect poor placement decisions made by desperate survivors. Some abandoned towns show signs of partial scavenging rather than total destruction. Furniture remains, but valuables are gone. It suggests orderly departure rather than massacre. Perhaps the residents relocated quietly. Perhaps caravans failed to arrive. The Mojave does not record their reasons. The lack of written explanation is part of the atmosphere. New Vegas resists filling every gap with exposition. Instead, it leaves silence where a story once existed. That silence invites speculation but never confirms. One of the more subtle mysteries lies in how quickly the Mojave forgets. The Strip thrives with lights and gambling. Freeside bustles with tension and trade. Yet only miles away, entire settlements stand empty. The contrast emphasizes uneven recovery. Civilization in the Mojave is not uniform. It is clustered, fragile, and selective. Even the NCR, with its structured bureaucracy, cannot revive everything. It chooses strategic value over sentiment. The Legion chooses symbolism over restoration. Mr. House chooses efficiency over nostalgia. In that calculus, some towns simply do not justify investment. The vanishing towns become background noise to larger narratives. Hoover Dam dominates headlines. The Courier's alliances shape endings. Meanwhile, empty houses erode quietly under desert wind. The Mojave's wind carries dust through broken windows. It erases footprints. It softens edges. Over time, even evidence of departure fades. A settlement that once held 20 people becomes indistinguishable from one that held none. Perhaps that is the true mystery. Not why specific towns vanished, but why so many attempts at rebuilding stall before permanence. The Mojave is not only a battlefield between factions, it is a test of endurance against environment and memory. The Strip's neon glow distracts from this pattern. It suggests progress. It suggests spectacle. But beyond the Strip, progress is uneven. For every Novak that survives, there may be 3 unnamed ranches that failed. The Mojave does not mourn these losses openly. It does not erect monuments for vanished communities. It simply absorbs them into its landscape. Over time, players may forget that Bonnie Springs once held ordinary lives before raiders claimed it. They may treat Nipton as a static horror rather than a former home. In that forgetting lies another layer of mystery. History in the Mojave is not preserved through archives and museums. It is preserved through ruins and rumors. When a town disappears, its story risks disappearing with it. The Courier can pass through these spaces without learning their full narratives. No quest marker demands investigation. No faction insists on closure. The vanishing towns remain optional curiosities. And perhaps that quietness is deliberate. Not every tragedy receives resolution. Not every community leaves a recorded legacy. The Mojave's map contains more blank spaces than explanations. As the sun sets over empty buildings and wind moves through open doorways, the desert continues its slow work of erasure. The Mojave does not require dramatic endings to conclude a story. Sometimes, it simply allows a town to fade, and when you walk away, the silence returns, leaving behind structures that hint at lives once lived, questions once asked, and answers that were never written down.